Service and Communications, the Governor of the Reserve Bank of Fiji, the Chair of the South Pacific Stock Exchange and its board.
It gives me much pleasure to be here tonight. I'd like to, of course, acknowledge the board of South Pacific Stock Exchange, the staff of South Pacific Stock Exchange, the Governor of the Reserve Bank of Fiji, various captains and members of the industry and the business community at large. After that introduction by the chairperson, I don't think I have to make a long speech at all. I just wanted to highlight a few points. I think it's important on these occasions, and we probably don't talk enough about it in these types of open spaces, generally about how the economy is doing. I think generally the feedback that people get tends to be from Parliament, which is sort of highly charged environment where people are sort of politicizing issues. But I think we need to take a stock take as an industry, as a business community, as to where we are today, and indeed some of the challenges that we as a country will face given what is happening globally, which is outside our own control. As of today, for example, our liquidity stood at $640 million. Our foreign reserve sits at $2.2 billion. So in that respect, we are doing well. But let's take stock of what is happening internationally. A much publicized trade war between USA and China. There is tariff warfare going on, 25% tariff being imposed by USA on Chinese products, and they in turn are retaliating. USA has said if you retaliate anymore, we'll put on another 5% tariff. It does have an impact, of course, on overall global confidence. Last year, the IMF and World Bank had predicted a general slowing down of the markets globally. However, unfortunately, the downward trend that they had talked about, in fact, is going to be further downgraded because of some of these issues that have come up. And you can see, for example, the Australian stock market lost over $80 billion in 2 days. Now, if you compare their stock exchange to ours, obviously we sort of pale into insignificance. But the fact of the matter is that this is what's happened. For a few weeks, there was speculation about, for example, that the real estate in Sydney was in fact depreciating, which is completely unheard of. Now, I understand it's currently stabilizing. The general outlook in major economies like Germany, UK, with its challenges of Brexit, and of course you have other economies like USA, without saying, and of course Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. There's a general downward trend in growth, or even anticipated growth. So what does it mean for us? Obviously countries like Australia will be at the cold face of any downward trend or impact because of the US-China trade war. And it will have a direct impact because Australia has a very deep market relationship with China in terms of raw material exports, etc. Now, of course, if there is a downward trend in the Australian economy, and if the depreciation of the Australian dollar further increases or exacerbates, it of course makes our dollar a bit more expensive for them. And then when you have at least 50 to 51% of our tourism arrivals coming from Australia, it could actually have a negative impact in terms of the inward travel into Fiji. Similarly, of course, if it happens in New Zealand, you could see a muting of that market. However, the reality of the matter is that Fiji is not so deeply immersed or subsumed by the global market chain. So therefore, we have the capacity and the ability to be able to buffer ourselves if we act and work smart and take advantages of some of the positioning that we can put in place because of the fact that we're not so deeply integrated. And I think that's very critical for us to understand, because a lot of people can have a sort of doomsday approach to it. And I just wanted to very quickly highlight to you what are some of those factors. And this is why I started off by saying that we have fairly buoyant liquidity, $640 million. We have a $2.2 billion foreign reserve situation at the moment. So we need to be able to take advantage of that. Government, as highlighted by the chairperson, has not only put in place some attractive incentives in terms of the growth of the capital markets, which I'll actually come to later on, but also through the budget we've announced a number of initiatives that will propel or at least increase the appetite, hopefully, of the private sector in investing in various aspects of the economy. One clear example is, and I've been talking to a few business people over the past few days, or actually last week, where there are at least about 7 companies that have already been to the engineers and architects and looking at building warehouses. We announced in the budget that we're going to provide various incentive packages, various tax breaks if people invest in warehousing. Those directly investing in warehousing or those who are investing in warehousing as an ancillary part of their overall business. So that is good news. And obviously, as we know, that the construction sector is critical for us to be able to ensure that we have jobs, we get the sort of robustness within the economy is sort of churning along. So similarly, there's a number of other projects in respect of, we're working with IFC, we are working with them in the housing sector to, again, whet the appetite of the private sector. Because the reality of the matter is that the private sector is critically important if we want to keep the economy moving. And this is a great opportunity, in particular for those of you who have the vision to think about the future, not just only thinking about the next 18 months or 2 years. And generally, if you see, throughout, if you pick up sort of great books on great businesses, and when did they sort of make their killing, or when were they position themselves, it was actually in times such as this. And you'll also see, and we've seen some appetite, there is, of course, I don't know how much of it has been publicized, but there's a well-known New Zealand company that's actually buying a Fijian property at the moment, a tourism property. Now, they have actually shown a lot of interest in that, and they have seen a lot of confidence in that. And that confidence stems from the fact that there is, we've seen the Standard & Poor ratings of Fiji now increase positively, where we now are BB minus. And that has, the reason why they said that they increased the rating of Fiji is because fundamentally in the fiscal restraint, the management of fiscal policies, and also in respect of the consistency in policies and the philosophical outlook of those policies. So that is critically important for us to be able to understand. So all of us need to be on the same page. Now that requires the business sector to also very quickly adopt and adapt to the changing environment, whether it's adopting the technology, whether it's adapting to new business practices in respect of transparency and compliance with the Companies Act. We have now, of course, through the Reserve Bank, the personal securities that we put in place. Already we've had 25,000 registrations. You can now, for example, go online and do name reservations for companies. All companies, as we've highlighted previously, will now, that have been in existence in Fiji, will give you a window of opportunity where you actually go in and re-register your companies. The reason why we're doing that, through the re-registration of your companies, the moment you do that, in the re-registration process requires a digital platform through which you will re-register. The moment you do that, you suddenly become online. The entire company's office will become online, as opposed to us going now physically getting all the manual records, scanning it and then putting it online. It takes a lot of time. So by this way, we will suddenly become, very much online, and we'll make it easier for your financiers, your bankers, and other people coming into Fiji. Ease of doing business will improve significantly, and within 12 months, you'll see a significant shift. I was told, unfortunately, just a few days ago, at some recent gathering in New Zealand, where we had some Fijian businesses, etc., and there was New Zealand businesses, an accountant from Fiji actually stood up and said, I just want to tell you that by 1st of January next year, don't be surprised if you wake up and your company's disappeared, because they want you to be digitally registered. I mean, that is a ridiculous thing to say. In New Zealand, for example, in the shift from the Personal Securities Act, they also did a similar thing, where they allowed all the registrations to be registered within a period of time, and then they went online. We're doing exactly the same thing. So the message I'm giving, ladies and gentlemen, all of us need to be on the same page, because all of us have the same objective outcome. You want to increase your business productivity, you need to increase your profitability. We want you to do that. We're providing an environment. We've got a business reform committee in place that's going around and looking at some of the issues in respect of FRCS. And of course, that's critical to understand that we need to improve services. Government, for example, in certain areas, we have to accept that some of our business processes need to be improved. So if all of us have an open mind towards achieving the same objective of transparency, ease of doing business, then we'll create a very good environment for ourselves. I also wanted to just very quickly mention about some of the listings, as has been highlighted about EFL. EFL is probably one of the largest divestments that the Fijian government has ever undertaken by any Fijian government. And it's quite a significant milestone. And as has been highlighted, we're looking at listing this company very soon on the South Pacific Stock Exchange. And that's critically important. I know many of you who are domestic account holders have not actually registered to get your shares. Please do so, because you in fact are getting ex gratia shares, and you'll be in the stock market again. We've got ordinary mums and dads. I've got ordinary mums and dads, people who are living in villages, people living in rural areas are saying, coming up to me, saying, I've got the shares. When can I sell them? When are you going to list them? So some people actually obviously see that as a quick sale. Others are actually seeing it, can I pass this on to my children? So I'm glad that in the board has actually decided to include, a competition for high school students, etc. Because we have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, 50% of our population is below the age of 27. And we need to be able to understand how you as a business can capitalize on that enormous potential that we have with our youth. We have currently our Honorable Prime Minister, as you would have seen in the media today, that he's been to various sites in respect of looking renewable energy prospects, how we can harness nature for our adaptation measures, our resilience measures. And these are sort of opportunities, of course, he is developing through our partners with Australia at this point in time and various other partners. So how can you piggyback on that? These are some of the things that you do need to think about, and indeed we need to be able to celebrate. I'm glad that Merchant Finance has also announced that they will be listing early next year, and we hope some of the other very lucrative companies of Fijian holdings, we understand, are also looking at listing themselves. So it's a great opportunity, it's a great environment. There are, of course, various challenges. We have, for example, opportunities in respect of our aviation sector. We have the A350s coming in November and December of this year. We're very lucky to get the A350s in such a short turnaround time. We're looking at destinations beyond our traditional destinations, whether we can reach out to the eastern seaboard of North America, reach out further westwards towards destinations like India, which is going to be the largest outbound market in a few years' time, where there'll be China. So these are the things about what we're calling positioning ourselves. We, of course, have an issue with Qantas, which is the second largest shareholder, that is actually cannibalizing the company in which they already have a 46% stake. There's something that we can talk about a lot more, and how they're actually flying the crowd. But I think that's something hopefully that can be resolved in the next couple of weeks. But ladies and gentlemen, my message to you is, please, this is a great time, great opportunity for us. We can be realistic about what is happening around us, but you also need to look within. You need to be able to collaborate with those who come to our shores and see how we can harness the energy of our people, how we can harness the untapped potential in terms of the economic opportunities, but also at the same time allow for the capital markets to grow, participate in that, encourage others to do that. I like the word that the chair used. We need to be able to demystify it. The moment you mention capital markets, a lot of people think, some amorphous idea or some group of people doing some shady deals in some locked room. We need to be able to demystify it. I'm glad I would like to say that you're not across Fintel, but I'd like to say you're across Sukuna Park. And that's the way to sort of get, people more into the sort of grassroots. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for all of you who participated and who have been nominated. And I'd also like to thank the board for this. And I wish you all a very good evening. Vinaka, thank you.
Congratulations, Vision Investment Listed Entities category. Of category 1, she gets herself a recognition plaque. She also wins a $200 sports gift voucher, BSP school merchandise, $75 RB Patel shopping voucher, FMF gift hamper, $50 SPX transaction voucher, and a return in ticket to Auckland, New Zealand.